Hello, this is Janet Gowan, Love Letters Live, and today's guest is somebody who you may know, those of you who live in San Francisco and taken part in this woman's walking tours, Nancy Botkin. Nancy, I'm going to go right to you to say hello and just tell a little bit about your walking tours, what you cover, and how you might as well say how people can join one.
All right. Yeah. Well, I do most of my walks under the auspices of Walk SF, which is my favorite nonprofit. It's a pedestrian advocacy group in the city.
Oh,
And my husband co-founded it like 20 plus years ago, 25 years ago. And so that's how I kind of got my start was they do the hard work of making sure that the city is safe for pedestrians.
yes. Oh, let's talk about that.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring the joy, because it's hard work, and they're the ones who get notified if there's a tragedy. And so we also need what am I trying to say? The joy of walking. We need to celebrate the joys of walking.
Okay, let's talk about the joys of walking for a minute because I'm very late to that. I'm a Los Angeles girl. We didn't walk at all.
So I
People,
hear.
pardon me?
So I've heard about LA.
Yes, yes. And it just anyway, people do now. But I learned the joys of walking only when I got a dog and I had to take it on a walk like 4 times a day for maybe a mile or so because all he ever wants to do is walk and run. And I know that both my daughters love walking, which is how I met you because Juliana is part of your friendship and walking tours. So what are the joys of walking? And while you're at it, I'm guessing there's some real health benefits socially and cognitively and what?
So I've read, I'm not an expert on the health benefits, but I do love every time I read an article, that says like you can stave off Alzheimer's by walking X number of miles a week.
Or 11 minutes a day. Okay. Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, great. Well, that I think is great. But for me, I like walking. Oh, first, I I've just always liked walking. Like when I was in college, I think was when I really started walking a lot. And
Where
really,
did you grow up?
I grew up on the East Coast in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, and then I went to university at Berkeley,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to walk to school in Berkeley, and I found that I really liked exploring the city that way.
So because you see more things than you would in any other way?
Yeah, and I know for myself, it helped me deal with the stress of being in college. I've always noticed that taking a walk and talking with someone is nice. I think some people, you know how sometimes when you're in a car driving, you can have a really deep conversation with if there's just two of you in a car.
Mhm.
And I feel the same way about walking. Like if you're walking with a friend and you can go for a lovely walk, and before you know it, you've really gotten to know each other and talked about things that you might not talk about if you were just
I can
looking
understand
each
that.
other in the eye. Yeah.
Let me ask you something also. Is pace important? I mean, you've got to have kind of the same pace to have a good walking partner, I would think.
That's true. I find I kind of walk a little faster than some people, and I have to consciously slow down. But I also find that the people that I end up gravitating towards walk about walk about my speed.
Yeah. And same size steps. So you can, if your feet are the same, then your mouth, you can talk more easily to each other. If you're leaning over your shoulder, hollering behind you, it's not going to be much of a conversation.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I think walking, as opposed to most other sports, is one that you can really talk while you walk, right? If you're biking, there's that, looking
Right,
over.
right, right.
I'm thinking skiing, tennis, like how do you have a conversation when you're doing any of these
That's
other
right. That's right.
walking is
Somehow in sports, now that I'm thinking about it, the battle is the conversation.
oh
The
yeah.
battle, the desire to, trump and dominate, and
Uh-huh.
um, not true in walking.
No, in walking, you are surrounded by a conversation piece. You know, there's so much to talk
Oh,
about.
I'm sure, even including, oh, look at that. I never saw that before. Uh-huh. So
Mhm.
what made you translate this into tours? And by the way, I learned about you because where I live, I saw a woman walking up the street and she was holding something that looked some kind of instructions and she looked a little bewildered. And I said, "Can I help you find something?" And she looked, and I saw she had something around her, some kind of a little placard around her neck. And I learned what it was. So
Yes, that was the stairway walk.
what made you decide to do tours, and
Well,
what are your preferred areas?
yeah, it's been a fun journey. I started doing regular walks, helping to organize regular walks for Walk SF, and um, we actually formed something we call the Walk Lab.
What is that?
And it's just a team of people who go and research walks and try, we try to map them out, then we test each other's
Oh,
walks, and we make sure that the instructions are easy and that there's nice things to see and we're not crossing scary streets and that kind
what do you consider nice things to see? I know personally, I love plant. When I'm walking, I'm a botany freak. What do you
Well, I collect different things.
like?
So
What?
and especially, I think the pandemic, one of the positive outcomes for me of the pandemic was having to walk like the same neighborhood again and again. And so I would go out with a different collection in my mind. I started out simply like, I'll look for circles. And and maybe I'll take a picture of everything that's a circle. And then I would be looking.
Does a circle mean circular buildings, or circles drawn on the ground, or circular flower beds, or what?
Anything that was, and it made me really look. And I realized like the thing, but this is my tendency. The thing about me is I look for sort of the minutia that might, like, undiscovered things. Um, Juliana, our mutual contact, she always teases me as about, she always says, oh, it's another Nancy notices things walk. For example, she and I went on a walk where we looked for castles in San Francisco,
You
but
look for what?
castles.
Oh, castles.
Yeah, we looked for castles,
Oh,
and we decided we're pretty loose with the definition of a castle,
mhm.
but if it has that, what's that stuff called?
Oh,
It's like,
yes,
uh,
right. I know what you mean. Like where the guns used to go
yeah,
through.
they used to shoot the gun, like, and it turns out a lot of houses have this ornament of the, oh shoot, I can't remember the name. And some houses have like little turrets and stuff.
Uh-huh.
There are a few houses that are famously called a castle.
In
Like,
San Francisco?
yeah, there's
What
like
are they?
three down in the Bayview, I think, two or three. So we've gone and looked for castles. So that was one of a favorite thing, or maybe going to steep streets, and then I got pretty excited about stairways.
Oh, yes, we have a lot of those, don't we? Yeah.
Yeah, and then trying to put together a walk that was as many stairways in as short a distance as possible, and that's how I got.
I think that's the one I saw where people were kind of huffing and puffing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that was such a wonderful time because, of course, all stairs lead to Russian Hill, right? I mean, there's stairs in all sorts of neighborhoods in
Right.
this,
Oh, yes.
but Russian Hill has like they're so romantic and so it's so fun. And if you go just to look for stairs, you don't care that it's a dead end. So if you're trying to get someplace,
Mhm.
like you're going to work or the bus or whatever, um, you're not going to go down the dead end alleys. But if you're trying to like
Oh,
look at
yeah.
stairs, that's the luxury, is you get to go down the dead end alleys. And there's a lot of stairs in Russian Hill where it's like two flights of stairs and then it goes out of sight and you can't tell what's up there. And it's
there's a staircase. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought this was, I can't begin to describe my joy, but there's a staircase in Bernal that goes up, and then there's a slide that
yeah.
goes down, and people will take that slide down to the dressed in the briefcase. Tell us about that.
I believe, isn't that the Esmeralda slide? Is
I
it?
don't know what it's called, but I've seen it.
Oh yeah, I mean, like 20 years ago, I got taken on a little tour and taken down the it was at least 20 years ago that they had just revamped the slide. And I couldn't believe it. It turns out there is more than one slide in the city. There's those, which some of your listeners might correct me. I think it's Esmeralda. And then there's also, I believe, Seward up above the Castro. There's another slide that goes down.
Playfulness on the way to work is just so. Do you take suggestions from people about walking tours, and how do you advertise them? How do people sign up? I still want to know that.
Oh, all through Walk SF. And so I really
Walk SF. Okay.
it would be, yeah, if people are interested at all, please look at Walk SF, and they have an events page.
Oh, good. Okay.
And then I also now do walks, self-guided walks for members every quarter. If you join Walk SF, you get a member walk, a little member walk that I've designed for to inspire you to get out. And it's something we found that people really liked it, especially during the pandemic.
Right.
And
do you ever design walks like that include children of different ages, or walks with dogs, or any specialty kind of things?
I think most of our walks are dog friendly, depending on the interest of your child. They might be child friendly. The stairway walks would be not stroller friendly by any stretch.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But we do the stairway walk. It was pretty exciting because it was so extreme. It was like the Mount Everest of our walks.
I'm sure.
But we do a lot of. I'm just putting together a walk right now, connecting the 3 new parks: Francisco Park, Top Park, and Battery Bluffs Park. They all were opened in 2022, and they all have this beautiful view of the Golden Gate Bridge and everything. And so I thought, that would be a fun day, So
and you really incorporate some historical learning into your walks too.
Yeah, it's really fun to, whenever I see something, I try to write it down. And then when I get home, I Google it. And it's amazing how sometimes when I'm walking with people, they'll say things like, "Oh, I've never seen this before. Do you know about that house?" And I'll say, "Let's write down the address." And then you go home and you get a whole story about it.
Isn't that good? Okay, because sometimes you pass houses that are so fascinating looking. And I look in windows, I wonder how people live there. But let me ask you about this. Let's talk about pedestrians and pedestrian safety, because that kind of cuts both ways. I mean, I did something recently, something like 1 year, like 46 pedestrians were killed in crosswalks.
Yeah, I don't know exact numbers.
I mean, the statistics
are terrible. It's really terrible. And yeah. But I get the professionals to be involved. I'm trying to support their work. I don't that kind of information. Just I almost become frozen with.
Oh yes, it's funny. I mean, I've raised my kids. You never, when you're waiting to cross the street, you do not stand right on the curb waiting for the light to change. You stand back, because you never know what fool is going to drive carelessly.
You need to have all of your ears and everything available. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things we can do to change the design of our streets and sidewalks, and that's what the city planners are trying to do in a lot of places.
But what about educating the pedestrians, and also on their responsibility to be courteous? And they got some bad habits themselves, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, but I think the difficulty is
Crossing against
they're
lights.
they're
Like,
not right, they're not behind the wheel of a, 2-ton
oh no,
vehicle.
I understand that the
Yeah,
dangers there, but for a pedestrian to be going on a walk and looking down at a device and just walking right across a red light,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I don't know how to reach those people.
some kind of education program all the way around would probably be wonderful.
Yeah, one of the things that WalkSF does is point out the most dangerous intersections of the city.
Oh, good. What are they?
I don't know. I think it's on their website. They have a
Oh,
map.
okay, yeah, yeah.
And then they target those areas. One of them is unfortunately Fourth and the area around the Caltrain station. And so a child was just killed there in
Oh,
a stroller in the crosswalk with a green light.
see? I know.
And that's a situation where no one was on a cell phone except maybe the car driver, right? And so, but it's a terrible, terrible tragedy. And one of the things I learned from attending the rally afterwards was that whenever you have a double turn right lane, it's extra dangerous because
Oh,
you can't
sure.
see. The pedestrian thinks they have the clear, the
Uh-huh.
car driver thinks they have the speed, and they can't see the crosswalk. And so that's a situation where I would not be able to blame the pedestrian
So a
for.
citywide educational program might be really nice. I don't know, that's not within your bailiwick, I see, but
Yeah,
still.
yeah, it's really, yeah, it is. I'm not a city planner. I haven't studied
Right.
street design. I love walking. I want it to be safe. And so I really want to support the group of people. Like, they have a team of people who
Yeah.
are concerned with the same questions that you have, these are the issues that they're working on. Um, and so I've kind of done that with other parts of my life where I know that I am not the one who's going to get up there and argue with City Hall. I just don't have those skills. I'm not a good public speaker. And so I actually like to donate money to people who will represent me.
Oh, nice. Okay, good. That's important. Let me ask you something because I am largely about love letters or the power of letters. And
Mhm.
you mentioned that you had found some.
Yes, I'm in
Can
the
you tell
middle of
us about
writing
those?
that. Yeah, and at first it's funny because at first I thought we were going to talk about a walk is like my love letter to Russian Hill, right?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah, okay, but I am reading. So, my aunt, who's in her late 80s, is going through the family letters and trying to pass on as much information about our family history to me.
Mm.
And we have this weird family that doesn't throw things out, including all 8,000 letters that they wrote between about 1900 and
Oh,
1925.
God bless them. People don't throw away letters, it turns out.
Oh my goodness. And they ended up in different trunks, and she's been everybody when they find one and find the trunk in the attic, they give it to my aunt. Luckily, she's an archivist. So we have, and it's been a really wonderful thing because we're on opposite coasts. She's in New Hampshire and I'm here. And so it's a way that we have been able to stay in touch. We are reading the letters that were written. Actually, we're working exactly on 1923 right now. And so it's really fun because it's like the letter was maybe read by one or two people in 1923, and now we're reading it.
Isn't
Like,
that something?
it's a really special feeling. And so it's really fun. If you want to get into the romances that
I
are going,
do.
yeah, it's fascinating. So,
What have you learned about your family that you never knew or never imagined?
well, I'm learning that the rumors were true.
What rumors, may I ask?
Yes. So my great grandmother fell in love with the man that she hired to design her house.
Hmm.
After she was a young mother with two children,
And already married?
already married, living a very comfortable life in Boston.
Mhm.
And they hired this man to design them a beautiful house. It still stands today. And they found they had a lot of connection. They were both real idealistic. This was like 1905, and he was married also, and the two couples started spending a lot of time together and spending time in vacationing in New Hampshire together. Well, that man is the person my grandfather called his stepfather,
Oh my.
even though they didn't get married for 20 more years, but they ended up living together. And so
what happened to her marriage?
well, I've always wondered, and we're still trying to tease that apart because it it's fascinating to read the letters after they when you can tell when they first are getting excited about each other, like they're starting to feel like they're of one mind. And um, there's one where he's writing from the trolley in Boston. He says, "I just couldn't wait. Sorry for my bad handwriting. I couldn't wait to write you. I just was so excited about what you said or our conversation, and I had all these thoughts I wanted to share." And it was as if like the sky was bluer and the world was everything was brighter and more optimistic. You could feel,
you know, something, there's something very sexy about the urgency.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so they were very passionate about each other. They proposed that the four of them try to have this like intense friendship. They maybe I'm not exactly, I can't remember all the details, but I did read all these letters from my great grandmother to
Uh-huh.
the new man about how she had these deep conversations with his wife. She tried to express how she loved her just as much as she loved him,
Long
and
didn't
she
have
wasn't going to
happen.
take him away. And the wife was like, "I nope, I'm out of here." And it was a very public divorce. In
Oh,
and they were all very modern people. Uh, okay, so that's kind of a little confusing. But it's been interesting to read the letters as they are really getting to know each other. And my great grandfather, he's continuing to communicate with both of them. And my great grandmother goes and stays with him in Boston and then comes up to New Hampshire with her new partner.
this is
And
wonderful.
yeah, it's really fascinating.
It really is fascinating because, you know, there's that seems to me, and recorded letters. And by the way, I just want to say, whatever letters you write, indelible ink and good paper, because you have, and I have copies of letters that were written, you know, in 1890. They're as legible today as they were the day they were written.
Yes. Or
Isn't that amazing?
illegible. Yeah. And oh my God, this handwriting can be so hard to read. They Part of his the charm of this architect, whose name was Hartley. Isn't that a cute name? I mean, it's a great name. So he signed all his letters Hart Ly. Yeah. Um yeah. I mean, it was love letters all along. Part of his like thing about him was he wrote on these tiny little pieces of paper in tiny little handwriting, and he kept them in his pocket, so he could just write when, because they
Mhm.
didn't have cell phones. So about the size of the cell phone. Actually, this is exactly the size of his piece of paper, and he wrote in tiny little pen and or pencil. He wrote in pencil, and only my aunt can really like.
That's really lucky that they've survived in past. But I was going to say, when you talked about his writing so suddenly on the bus, it had the feel of, I got to get this right. Uh-huh.
And you know what was also interesting? In those days, the mail came twice a day. And so they had this Boston, New Hampshire lifestyle. My great grandmother and Hartley moved to New Hampshire together to land that my great grandfather had purchased. And so it's interesting what a agreeable relationship it
Oh,
was.
I thought I was going to ask that, because you say that, and they still stay with each other, and they go. So
Yeah. His
somehow,
wife was out of the picture. She went on to do her own thing, and she became the most famous of the three. She was an early, speaking of love and romance and babies, she became an early birth control pioneer.
oh, good for her.
Yeah. And she was
In Boston, that was really something though then, wasn't it?
yeah, she went to jail for one night, but she did go like the Comstock law and everything
Yeah.
tried to silence her. She was sending obscenity in the mail, so she ended up having like her own career. And actually, one of the little tidbits about her was she was told that she couldn't have any more children, that would kill her if she got pregnant again and there was no birth control information available to her except abstinence. And some people suspect that that's why her husband left her for my great grandmother.
Really? Okay.
But we don't know.
But sometimes it sounds like there's kind of that feeling of, even though you can't be together, once you've loved someone, you've loved them for some reasons that are still existing.
Yes. And my great grandfather, when his wife and Hartley died, they died of like within a few days of each other. He said to my grandfather came to him and said that my great grandmother and Hartley had died, and my great grandfather said, "I always loved your mother, and Hartley was my best friend."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just like the most beautiful thing that someone could say.
I agree. I agree. I hope that was written down then too, right?
I don't know if it's
I thought, okay, I thought
was verbal.
that was
verbal. That was oral history. So that's a good point. Yeah. But we have so much else of their passion written down about life and everything.
So passion written down. I'm sometimes asked, how sexy can you be in a letter to, and I say, it's meant for one person. It's going to be read by one person. Be as sexy as you want, be as graphic as you want. Well, what happens, people find this letter, good, let them learn a little something about grandma.
Yeah.
She wasn't always an old lady.
It's interesting because like now we use emojis on the computer because all of our writing is on the computer, and we want to insert a little bit of emotion, but they drew little pictures, and they had they also used a lot of you might say inside jokes where they only spelled the word probably PROLLY, and they had a lot of cutesy or clever. It was very clever. A lot of their I just came upon the word. Someone was describing the new car, and it had toughtitude, like it was tough. So they
language. Secret language.
Yes, the secret language. It's very charming, right? Like
always important. Let me ask you something. Let's get to your letter, because you said, I thought I was going to talk about my love letter to Russian Hill. If you were to write a love letter yourself right now, it would be to Russian Hill?
That's what I'm thinking about, because I know you live on Russian Hill, and yeah.
Now, to whom would you see? I think a real love letter gets mailed and received, as you are the witness to with all these letters in your life right now. To whom would you mail it?
Ooh, who would I mail it to? Well, I guess I kind of wrote such a letter, and I wrote it to the president of the Russian Hill Neighborhood Association.
That's what I was going to suggest, actually.
It's kind of funny because when she contacted me, I just was like, at first I felt like, should I be kind of formal? Like, and I couldn't help myself. I was so gushy. I was like, oh, do you realize that you live on possibly the best block of the whole city? I assume you appreciate it. And she immediately, said, yes, I know. I love where I live.
Good. Okay. That's wonderful.
But I could not help myself. I just decided I could just be myself and just like gush to this woman that I never had met. And yet I already knew that. I was in love with her hill.
That's wonderful. That is so perfect for a love letter, and perfect where you sent it. Yes.
Yeah, it was well received. And
Of
then I got
course.
to visit her, and that was, and we just picked up as if we, because both of us had the same love, right? Um,
Wonderful.
and we were able to really share that joy.
Oh, this is just exactly what I love hearing about. Thank you for doing this with me. It's so nice to just hear about what you do and to meet you finally. And for sharing all this about, your walks and what they serve and how valuable they are and what we get to see and just the joy of walking, and about your family love letters. That is just pure gold. You'll somehow organize them into one book, one
Yeah,
scrapbook.
my aunt has organized them beautifully, and they will go to a local library in New
Oh,
Hampshire, which is great.
oh,
They
oh,
will get digitized. Um,
okay.
and because they talk a lot about a lot of other local issues.
Oh, wonderful.
They did. What's nice about these letters is they weren't just like ho hum. This is what I did today.
Right.
They were like, I have an idea about a new garment that would be much better for women to wear than the traditional dress with the corset. So they were getting into intellectual things,
Yeah.
and they also talked in these loving terms about each other. And
Wonderful. I'm hoping that maybe someday this book will be available to everybody.
we'll see yeah, I think there's a book in there. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do too. Okay, so maybe you'll work with somebody on that. I'd love to see it. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, dear.
It's been
I
lovely
appreciate
talking to
this.
you. I hope my crazy family story didn't get too confusing.
Crazy family stories are confusing and they're wonderful. And we all have crazy family stories if we take a look. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right.
So
Bye.
I'm gonna tell you goodbye for now. And until however we meet again, I will look forward to that.
Great. Yes. I'll hope to see you on the Russian Hill
Yes,
staircase.
and if I ever get strong enough, I'll join one of your walks.
We can do a one just for you.
No, no, no. I like group things. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.